It's where you will have the opportunity to meet and listen to the applicants for election as European representatives 2023 to 2025. My name is Franziska Ylander. I will moderate this webinar, which I'm very happy and very proud to be allowed to do. I welcome this new initiative to have a hearing with the representatives of the regions very much. My own background is that I was a Euro representative at the IPA board 2017 to 2021. And before that, I was vice president of the EPF, but that's another story. Around me and on the screen, you can see the 8 applicants for this position at the board. 4 of them are running for re-election, 4 are new ones. All applicants have written and published personal presentations, including short and informative CVs of their formal merits, and that's something I will leave out because you have probably already read their presentations, but you can also find the details of things like that. The first part of this webinar, each and one of you applicants in alphabetic order will have around 4 minutes to speak, to talk as freely as possible about yourselves in relation to this task of being a member of the IPA board. I must prepare you that I will be extremely strict with time limits because we have such a limited time to access to such a limited time, and I will interrupt you in a way that probably can be very rude if necessary. This is the first part, the first 45 minutes. The last 45 minutes will be devoted to listen to the reflections and associations of the applicants around a specific question, but that is something I will get back to. So to save the time, which is not too long, let us start now. And I would like to introduce first Francisco Atalortia from the Madrid Society. Please take the floor, Francisco.
Thank you very much, Franziska. It's an honor for me to be here. I am running for this second term after a year and a half of intense work. We came in at a turbulent time during the pandemic with the withdrawal of a European candidate, Vic Sedlak, shortly before the elections, and the resignation of an elected European representative, Rachel Blas, as soon as our term began. Both were due to the disagreements with the strategic direction and the decision-making processes of both the outgoing and the incoming administrations. So we had to get down to work right away. One of the most contentious issues from the outset was the discrepancy in dues payments across regions. Heng Yan and his finance team had already taken steps to bring us closer to a more balanced system. I was part of the working group of the COVID emergency funds. Faced with a highly polarized confrontation between regions, we were able to find a creative solution by focusing on the economic situation of the individual rather than that of any specific country. This measure was approved by consensus, and I anticipate that it will serve as a model to solve other financial issues, allowing increasingly fair and equitable outcomes and resolving tensions between countries and regions over economic questions. Additionally, I have been involved from the beginning in the debate about the role of teleanalysis in the future of analytics training. This is a long-standing debate that has been brought to the fore during the pandemic emergency. The IPA is a membership association with many different opinions, and it is vital to have a broad knowledge of the subject in an effort to go deep into the different arguments to find a good enough solution that ensure a high quality training. Extreme polarization often leads to counterproductive conflict. It is always more fruitful to be open to the differences and the possibility of seeking points of agreement. Finally, I have some concerns about what is happening at APSA. Firstly, because I consider the exceptionalism they enjoy in the regulation of training standards within the US to be very unfair, despite there being historical reasons for this since Freud's time. Secondly, because I think their plans to open membership to non-psychoanalysts is a mistake. Fortunately, we have a very good working atmosphere with the president, vice president, treasurer, and representatives from other regions. I think we have formed a good collaborative team. It's my commitment to continue working to find a consensus that will allow us to resolve some of these issues and achieve a solid IPA on a firm footing as it advances towards the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Francisco. And I think we go on. The next one on the list is Leslie Caldwell. Please, Leslie.
Thank you very much, Francisca. And like Juan, I am also seeking re-election, having come in the kind of 2 years ago intake. And I would very much like to be re-elected because it takes a while to accustom oneself to everything that is going on in the IPA. And I had never been directly involved in its administrative work until then. So I discovered just how much work there was to do, and in one way, how European-centered I am and probably remain. But one of the things about the IPA is that it is an international membership organization. And as such, that has meant that over the last 2 years, or nearly 2 years, I have been in a learning curve about other areas, other regions, and the problems and difficulties that they have to face, which are in one way similar to us, the difficulty in finding many analytic cases, for instance, keeping it going, keeping psychoanalysis going in the pandemic. But in other ways, we have distinctively different problems. And so one of the things that I have discovered in the current board is how important it is to recognize the internationalism of the IPA and how strong that internationalism can be. We have seen it in the responses to the unfortunate war in Europe, anniversary today of the first year of that war, and the way in which both our regional organization, the EPF, and the IPA has worked and will continue to work to hold and support our colleagues in those areas. I think that this is not just a question of administrative commitment or indeed psychoanalytic commitment. It takes us into what we think psychoanalysis is and how we relate the activities of the consulting room to the crises of an extremely troubled world, while keeping in mind the centrality of psychical reality. One of the things that has been extremely rewarding for me over the last nearly 2 years is that this IPA board has been a very healthy working environment. People disagree, they disagree quite strongly, but actually the commitment to working together, holding our nerve, as it were, and continuing to try to resolve what sometimes look like intractable difficulties has been very impressive. And I have been very honored to be a part of this group and the working relationships that have been forged. And I think one of the things that has made that perhaps easier for our group than for preceding administrations is that Harriet and Adriana decided to increase the frequency of meetings of the board. In the past, the board only met, I think, twice a year. We have been meeting for the first year every month online, and now every 6 weeks or so. So that means that there is a continuity possible in the connection between all of the board members. And I think this is very important.
I think the time is soon.
Okay, my last point would be that there are current anxieties that specifically relate to Europe, but as Juan has indicated, we have other anxieties relating to other areas. I think the best we can do is put our psychoanalytic hats on, think calmly, and do not panic about any of the decisions that are around waiting for us in the next administration, if we're elected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leslie. And I must excuse myself for not mentioning that you are from the British Association. And please, next, Gabriella Giustino from the Italian Psychoanalytic Society. Please, Gabriella.
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, Francisca. I'm Gabriella Giustino. I'm training and supervising analyst of the Italian Psychoanalytical Society. I live and work in Milano. And of course, I have a large experience in consulting with patients and teaching, carrying out supervision, and so on. I would say something about the fact that my experience has been enriched by my institutional experience as a secretary of the Italian Psychoanalytical Society and my frequent participation in the international EPF and IPA scientific meetings has taught me the importance of considering clinical and theoretical differences as a source of enrichment and mutual respect within the psychoanalytic community. I seek for the first time the election as a European representative to the IPA board, drawing on two main points. First point, I conceive the IPA as a container for psychoanalytic identity and a community of psychoanalysts throughout the world. In my view, all psychoanalysts should experience the IPA as a highly qualified common house, an open-minded center of scientific elaboration, and a protective professional container for all its members. This is a role that, in my opinion, only the IPA can carry out, thanks to its interregional structure and inclusive and open-minded mentality of which the board, the IPA board, is the author and the guarantor. I would like to emphasize the fundamental role of the IPA in the field of science as a facilitator of an exchange of ideas and integration of the various theoretical clinical contributions from areas that are also geographically distant and different. In my view, the IPA plays also a pivotal role in the creation of a common language based on participation in committees, task forces, working groups, the IPA website. I think that the IPA communication is very important, and the potential of this communication can be further implemented by using webinars and online meetings to promote communication between the different regions of IPA and between the IPA and national societies. Second point of my candidature is the importance of regarding the world outside. We are living in a complex world, and observe changes in many areas drastically affect the balance of our sense of security in human life and relationships. During the perfect storm of socio-economic crisis, political, psychological threat, I think that psychoanalytic thinking has a lot to offer, not just in a consulting room, but outside too. Our analytic experience informs, in my opinion, our capacity to contribute to wider current debates, such as poverty, migration, race, gender, and so on, which is a great impact upon our analytic practice. I recognize the IPA board in its effort to advance in this respect, and I wish to contribute for that. I think these are my two main points, and I will stop here. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. You are all very clever in keeping time, I must say. my main worry as a webinar leader is a moderator is to watch over this aspect. So now to Dimitris Jackson from the Hellenic Psychoanalytic Society. Please.
Thank you. I may not have my keeping my own times. I'll depend on you for that to keep me in check. Let me say that from the time that I've been on the board, we've had to deal with some very difficult and controversial issues. I didn't realize how difficult, in fact, until I came onto the board. The first and I think the most overriding one, the one that had affected the whole world has of course been the COVID pandemic and how that affected our practices as psychoanalysts, and of course the role of remote analysis or teleanalysis, as it's called. I think there's no one who denied that it was extremely useful that we were able to work remotely. I couldn't have think how we might have worked in a pre-digital age. But now that the pandemic is almost over, not completely, but almost over. I mean, what is the role of remote analysis? It's still a highly controversial issue. Let me just say, my own position is that as opposed to certain other regions that feel that remote and in-person analysis is a co-equal, I think that the importance of bodily presence cannot be understated. We know that there are nonverbal methods of communication that are just we're not in contact with working remotely. Nevertheless, there is a place for remote work, and I think that needs to be studied further. Myself, I was on the committee for racism, prejudice, and discrimination. We all want to increase or open up our ranks, if you like, to people of, minority groups, open them up as much as possible to make them more, to make our discipline more representative of these disciplines, of these, minority groups. How we go about this, however, is again very controversial. There are differences of opinion in regions where, political activism, let's say, is much more acceptable. Increasing or taking certain measures to make sure that there are people from minorities represented in committees as candidates, in training analysts, etc. There are others, such as myself, who feel that we should be analysts first, psychoanalysts first, and political activists as a result of that, but not in reverse. Other important issues, I think a major one, of course, the one still reverberating, is the 2017 Buenos Aires decision on the change in the Eitington model and the 3 to 4 model. That, of course, has been voted, and in a sense, it's over and done. However, the repercussions from that decision to make the frequency of 3 times a week acceptable within the Eitington model has left some very painful open wounds that are not about to close quickly or easily. They're still being discussed and they're still being debated. And we really need to, I think, in a sense, what's done is done. I mean, the vote has been passed. However, I think in going forward, we do need to think about, discuss, and divide and define what are our core issues and values. What makes psychoanalysis different from other forms of psychotherapy? I think that's extremely important. And finally, there's, as mentioned earlier, APSA's decision to make to bring in non-analysts as full voting members of APSA. Okay, sorry about that. I'll just finish by saying, beyond these particular issues, I think it's a major issue. What is the role of the IPA today? Does it have a role? What is its role? How relevant is it? And how should it function in relation to international psychoanalysis? I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dimitris. And now, please, Yael Samuel from the Israeli Society. Please, Yael.
With me? Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Yes? Okay. Thank you to be with us, first of all, this afternoon. I will present myself a little bit for those who did not have time to read the position statements. I was born in Paris. I worked and lived in Paris, Brussels, and I settled in Israel 24 years ago. I am a training analyst of the Israel Psychoanalytic Society. I teach and I supervise candidates. I am also, I had a lot of roles in my society as member of educational society and chair of many committees, but now I am also the co-chair of the IPA in Health Committee and a member of the IPLs in the community and the world, headed by Mira Ehrlich-Guinot. As I thought which points I want to raise in front of you, and I thought that I don't have the experience to be on the board, and I heard now many issues, and I will learn, and I am ready to learn what I don't know. But I thought about 4 points. The first point is, if I will be elected as a European representative, I think that the European psychoanalysis has its own challenges and its own needs, and that the European psychoanalysis has to be well represented. I think also that it is very important to have a good relationship with the European Psychoanalytic Association, and of course I think that if it will be possible to defend the European psychoanalysis, it will be regarding a global perspective and to respect the cultural differences. I know that in Europe also there are cultural differences, not only all over the world. The second point is I think that psychoanalysis is a treatment, it's a method of treatment. And I am deeply convinced that with the psychoanalysis, we can help our patients to have a better life, or we can try, if you can try. And for this, I think that the psychoanalysis has the values and principles that has been to be defended. And I have my own positions, and for example, around the remote analysis, I think that if there is no other alternative, as of course, but I believe in a setting, and I believe in an analytic setting with the physical body of the patient and the analyst. And I think that the IPA and the representatives have to ensure the basic values of the psychoanalysis, and not only for the members, and also for the candidates. The third point, as I already said, I am a member of the IPN, of the IPS Committee of Mental Health, and of the IPA in the community and the world. I joined the committee of mental health
1 minute.
4 years ago.
1 minute.
How many?
1 minute.
And okay, I want to say one thing, so that I want to say that our members, the members of the IPA, they are making a fabulous work all around the world in the field of mental health and in the field of all over the world. And I will try to sustain these activities so important now for our world. And I think that psychoanalytical thinking could help not only the citizens, but also all the professionals. The fourth point is the communication between the IPA and its members, but it will be the part of the discussion. And I have to stop here.
Yes.
And thank you.
Thank you very much. Let us go on. The next applicant is Dace Sortland from the Norwegian Psychoanalytic Society. Please, Dace.
I'm grateful to be here today, and I'm very honored to be proposed by Norwegian Society to be representative, as I do belong to more than one country. And it's all started as a dream or a vision, as there was actually no reality. There was no psychoanalyst or psychoanalysis in my country. And I wish to share a bit part of that dream. So we were there in Dubrovnik under open sky by the Adriatic Sea. Clinicians from so-called East Europe bloc countries and ex-Soviet, curious about each other, about the patients, and about psychoanalysts who helped to understand that on deeper level. And it was also the first time meeting with the West, with real IPA analysts from the West countries where psychoanalysis had survived. So they spent there 1 week with us, sharing their knowledge and experience. But I think, and somehow they become representatives for us, for psychoanalysis and for IPA. And not only through theoretical understanding, but also through these small interactions and live interactions, which made us welcome and wish to belong to this community, to IPA. So many of us returned afterwards for interviews in hope to become candidates and start training, and to become direct members of IPA, as there was no societies yet in our places. So I also started this training in Hungary and Prague Institute and went to shuttle, as I mentioned, the Balkans, and lived there for a while. And we met in Amsterdam for theoretical seminars. And that was again this containing function, which felt us very welcome into this magical IPA. So we lived in analyst homes for 4 years under that training. And I'm very thankful for that experience. And I moved to Norway, and I was advised to start new training in Norwegian Institute. And I did under Entington model and became member and training analyst. And now I'm on the board of Institute and leader of supervising committee and involved in different projects in Norway. But somehow I feel IPA was closer to me in the beginning. And so this proposal to become representative brought me to this origins and to our shared dreams then by Beatrix C. And I don't have previous experience in the board, so I will not speak about concrete mentioned matters you are discussing. But I hope that this very diverse experience of different countries, different political systems, different languages, and also more than one training experience, the shuttle and regular would be a resource as representative. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Des. Now, Conceição Tavares de Almeida from the Portuguese Society. Please, Conceição.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here. Sorry. It's an honor to be here again. As some of my colleagues are running for the second term for board member. I'm a psychoanalyst. I'm for Portuguese from Lisbon. It's the first time a Portuguese member is involved directly in the board of the IPA. I was surprised, and nevertheless, I feel this position of being a Portuguese in the world is something we are quite used to. Let me tell you a little bit about our history. Part of Portugal's history was dominated by colonialism, and being part of in the IPA board of the racism and discrimination and prejudice task force gave me a depth sense of how responsible we can be being in other people's shoes. I think this fascinating and yet difficult work we developed is the main purpose of being all together. As I was saying, we had a dictatorial regime whose slogan was "proudly alone" some years ago. And standing here for the second time in this position, I wanted to make it clear that our strength and purpose come precisely because we are not alone. I see my commitment not only with psychoanalysis, although it's very important. We come from the clinic and we treasure our training, but also with psychoanalysis analysis altogether. And why do I make this distinction? Because being an European, and we can see it right away, we are very distant from other regions. We have a legacy, we have an history of cultural history, the birth of psychoanalysis, and also the birth of Occidental civilization, also of colonialism, as I said. But we have such a diversity, this panel can show. We don't speak the same language. We have to make efforts to understand each other and to commit and to relate with each other in spite of all our differences. So altogether, being an European, I think it put us in a difficult and also relevant position towards the rest of the world. Nevertheless, being with the other regions has become, and it's becoming, it started, and I think I would love to keep it very challenging, because you really have to put yourself in other cultural and other historical levels of understanding psychoanalysis, and also group dynamics and all of that. By saying this, consensus, communication, and addressing conflict are key words, no doubt of it, but it's important to try to develop ways of have a common ground that respects different points of views. That being said, well, in a board meeting, I remember I brought this popular sentence that we can only give our children roots and wings, and this is how I see it. We have to have a psychoanalysis legacy rooted in our path and being proud of that, but also being able to spread our wings into the future and welcome the challenge we are facing nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you, Concepcion. And now, finally, Martin Theising from the German Psychoanalytic Association. Please, Martin.
Yes. Dear Franziska, dear colleagues, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today. As European representative on the IPA board from 2015 to 2019, I was able to experience how important it is for our international psychoanalytic identity to encounter the other and to exchange our ideas with experienced colleagues from other parts of the world for a living and developing psychoanalysis. The IPA unites us. It stands for quality with certain standards that we should strive to maintain and improve. The core of our psychoanalytic identity, for which the IPA stands, is our clinical work with the unconscious and with inner conflicts, and thus the deep encounter with all aspects of life and with its finiteness. From the experiences we gain in this process derives the applications of psychoanalysis that we can profitably use in psychotherapy, in the social and cultural science, in medicine and psychology, and in public political life, to name but a few areas. Psychoanalysis is a clinical method and a social and cultural theory. This basic understanding allows the development of many different theoretical and therapeutic concepts. However, diversity and inclusion must not be equated with unlimited anything goes. If psychoanalysis does not want to betray its values and points out how little we are masters of our own house, and thus opposes fantasies of omnipotence, it will always remain a painful thorn in the flesh of society. In the current organization of the IPA as a membership organization, the component societies of the IPA are not institutionally represented. Yet the IPA urgently needs component societies. The members identify with them. They play a central role in the education of young colleagues on behalf of the IPA and, last but not least, in collecting finances for the IPA. These important functions of the societies should also be reflected in the administrative structure of the IPA. Such representation, oh no, I come later to this. I'm thinking specifically of the training standards and our ethic guidelines. The 3 regional Zoom meetings of the presidents of societies, which have been established in recent years, are an important step in the right direction, together with the development of the 4th region, which I support and in which I'm also involved. New digital media are a great help for our collegial exchange and the training of our candidates. However, we must be aware of the dangers that the use of this technology poses, especially to confidentiality, which is of central importance for psychoanalytic work. Without reliable confidentiality, there can be no psychoanalysis. So far, there is no computer program that has not been hacked. Nor can I imagine anyone working as a psychoanalyst who has never met a real patient in their training, but only knows them on a 2-dimensional screen. Contemporary psychoanalysis is today based on the assumption that processes of exchange in psychoanalysis are not based solely on the exchange of words, but on an interpersonal encounter with the physical presence of the others and of 2 partners. Lastly, I would like to mention that I'm aware of coming from a country where infinite suffering was inflicted on humanity and also on psychoanalysis, and where insights into the abysses of human death were opened up. With this background, I would like to contribute to the further development of the outlined goals and strengthen our common ground. I would like to be able to develop personally in the collegial international exchange. In these days of war, it is more than obvious that we need a dialogue. I see this as a unique opportunity and ask for your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin. And you take a deep breath now because you will soon start again. And thank you all for this very interesting and competent and sympathetic presentations that you have made. For the second part of our webinar, we have decided to suggest that all applicants, all the 8 of you, could give us your reactions and ideas about a question that we have thought out. Unfortunately, we didn't receive any questions from the cyber audience. So we discussed together and found this question, which we hope that will have relevance to the individual members of the IPA. You are the ones listening to this hearing and the ones who take the decision on how to vote, the individual members of the IPA. And I'll read to you the question, how it was formulated. A recurring problem in the relation between IPA and its membership is distance. Members tend to experience IPA as something very far away, sometimes also something expensive, maybe just representing oversight. When you think about being a board member, do you have any ideas what you would like to present to the board to bring the members closer to the IPA and more aware of what IPA can offer to its membership and thereby to psychoanalysis? So we start from the other way around now, and I leave the floor first to Martin again. Please, Martin.
Yes, thank you. I think an important attempt to connect members more closely with the IPA is what we are doing right now. And of course, you mentioned that there are no questions by the membership, but I think it's a beginning, and let's hope there will be more interaction in the future. And I know that numerous webinars recently have already contributed significantly to bringing the IPA closer to many members. There are many webinars to very different aspects, and I think they were very fruitful. We should develop it further with the reflective use of all modern means of communication. An important concern of mine is to intensify the link function to the societies. As you may know, every representative has, I think in my time it was 6 or 7 link societies, and the link function not only to the respective presidents, as I already mentioned, but also to the members. This is of central importance for the vitality of the IPA. Link persons could, where possible, for example, attend general meetings of the link societies and report regularly on developments in the IPA. If the component societies were also constitutionally represented in the IPA, I already spoke about this idea, this would help the individual members to develop greater closeness to their international organization. The last, perhaps the most important point, I know that many of us who are involved in international psychoanalysis were already active as candidates in IPSO and have met candidates from other countries here and have often been in exchange with them in clinical groups for decades. The earlier the encounter with colleagues from other countries takes place, in other regions of course, the more lasting effect it is likely to have. Encounters with international colleagues should be systematically organized during training already. We can develop some programs. The whole thing works best if we know how to convey our lively joy of international cooperation. As is well known, pleasure arouses interest. We should always keep this in mind when thinking about the future of the IPA and speaking about it. We should do it in a joyful way. This is a very important point to connect members, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Interesting and useful ideas. I agree totally. Well, we go on, and Conceição, are you ready to tell us what you think?
Yes. Some of it has already been done, and I can share with you what my contribution as a board member has been in related to this very interesting question Francisca brought us. Previously, when I said that IPA is my commitment is not only with psychoanalysis but with psychoanalysts, I really mean it. And since I have been a board member, I see IPA as a living body made of people. So sometimes when people are so distant, or if we are names written in a wall, you cannot relate with people. So I think it's very important that people realize that we are people for people. We are doing this for each other, and each one of us. IPA, not like EPF, it's not a federation of societies. It's really an association of members, and we are so many, but we can really relate with each other. It's very challenging doing that. One of the ways of doing it, and I totally agree, is link function. Link function is very important, but it's challenging to overcome the president and really reach the members. what I have been doing with my societies is trying to work with presidents in ways I can reach and meet the members. I was very recently in India to meet one of my link societies and the members, and I tried to contact with them. And I was also invited for in Paris by one of my societies to have a scientific and political meeting all together, because it's very important to combine the two of them. I can share with you a proposal in last board meeting, which was to try to in each meeting in presence we have to make it in every region, to meet some societies and to have a meeting with them, and also us board members to bring something of scientific level. And in scientific events, I think we board members should meet people also and talk a little bit about who we are and what we can do. Also, obviously, communication is crucial, and this kind of event and the bittersweet of pandemic really brought us the ability of of reaching out different people by using technology. And although it's not very comfortable, it's really something we should master more and more, because it's important to show ourselves as people, talking with people. As people, we failed. It's important also to be aware of it, but we have doubts. So it's something we are working through all time. So idealization can be sometimes related with our function, and sometimes even in board meetings we can sometimes split and in a slippery way of thinking us and them. It's very important that we should be cautious not to it's easier, but it's childish to be in the position of us and them. We are all IPA, and each member can be a contribution, have a contribution, and should see himself like that. Last but not least, I was also I am part of the appointments committee. One thing we tried when
I think we have to stop here.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
It's
I
still open to everyone to participate.
Should have warned you. I'm sorry, but it was interesting to listen to what you had to your contribution, as everything is really very interesting. Please, Des, what ideas have you had?
I hope I have time to share.
Yeah.
I do think we are emotional beings, and I believe that emotional experience also colors attachment to IPA. And I would like to start with that we take care of those who are already engaged and have spent years of their lives in projects or committees. So it's important that it matters what they have been doing, and if there is natural time for change or ending, that it happens in very respectful dialogue. And if there is money involved and finances, that it's also transparent why and where and what. I also think about local societies who is often engaged and identified with IPA in a moment when there is international happening. So how to balance this routines or practice with team congresses and have very long and big experience with this open wish to share and to be involved from local societies, because in that moment also can be this turn of emotional attachment. And maybe to find some reduced prices for gala dinners or candidates for local society or students who is not yet candidates, maybe they have possibility to end some part of program for reduced price to feel more welcome and belonging. I also think that conference in general is these treasured moments of live interactions, and I would think it's important to facilitate more experiences in small interactive groups, maybe to have these repetitions of the groups, and very important observation or experience also not to close registration for the groups. So if there's more people who want to attend, if it's not a clinical presentation, it's always possible to find some place to talk, but not to close, and to include those who wants to be part of it. I also think that in big conferences, maybe it's important to hear with local committee and to find one same time and space where every evening people can meet. It don't have to be rented space, which costs money, but not everyone is invited to organize dinners, and maybe they come alone so they can naturally know they will find someone to talk and to get to know. Then I think about roles of representatives. I have not been a representative, so I don't know how it is, but I think if we could make more aware that every member can actually approach and talk, either it's coffee or it's line, but to be more available on this already real life meetings. And also maybe avoid executive tables and gala dinners, so that everyone can be welcomed by any table and talk with anyone they want in these moments when we actually are together in conferences. Then I thought I heard there exists this house in London, and which is IPA home, and how to maybe to make more active invitations to members to visit or to join when it's
one more minute.
Yeah, conferences or opening hours, and then online. How to make it's very good website, but how to make it even more interactive and alive. For example, to make the link where members could directly send message to the board or to the committee they are interested in to work with, or make the meetings online with live interaction for committee matters. Maybe not everyone can be part of committee, but it'd be nice to talk with people 1 hour from all the world about the topic. And maybe to try experiment with large group online.
Thank you, Dace. I think I have to stop here. Lots of very interesting suggestions. Thank you very much. Well, now it's you, Yale. What do you want to speak about?
Yes, I want to say that the first step to have more members, more active members in the IPA, it is a kind of education of the candidates. We teach them, we try to teach them how to be a good analyst, and I think that we have also to teach them how to be an international analyst. And I think that we have to encourage more and more their participation in IPSO, the International Psychoanalytic Organization. It is not only a friendly organization, but have all kinds of activities, seminars, supervisions, and they meet and they have congresses. And I think that it begins there. It begins with the training. and not after the member has already, I don't know how many patients and so on, and it's expensive and so on. And I think that it has to be a part of the training, to train the candidates that they are not alone in their own society, but that they belong also to the IPA. It is the first point. The second one is the work with the presidents. I know that there were already meetings with the presidents of the society recently. I don't know what have been decided there, but I think that there is a key. If they are convinced that of the importance of the IPA, they will also speak to their members. They will also encourage to their members to be a part of. And it is not so difficult. An email every month. Look at the IPA website. There is a new podcast of Arvesh Far. There is a new presentation of the societies. There is a new presentation of a committee. And I think that the role of the presidents are essential. And I don't know what was decided in these meetings, but I think that we have to meet them again and again and again and again, because they are, if they are involved, they will also involve their members, and they will explain again and again why we pay so much money, because it is one of the problem. I heard these voices many times. And the third thing, it is that I think that we have to invite the members to be a part. For example, I took an example recently. Cordelia Schmidt from New York, she had an idea to edit a book with essays, okay? And we invited in the committee, in the IPA, in the community and the world, we invited the members to write. And we received a lot of essays. And and I think that it is, I think that many analysts, in my experience, they make a fabulous work. They have fabulous projects out of the course. They have articles, and if we can invite them more and more to show their work, if it's possible. I think that they want to show their work. They want to write. They want to make videos, and if we can have projects to invite them to show their work, and I think that it is very important. In my experience, when, for example, another example, 2 years ago in the IPA committee, we give the award for the best project. We received 40 projects. It's a lot, because 40 projects is a lot of analysts work, and they respond because they not only want to have the award, they want to be recognized for their work, and that the IPA will value and recognize also this work. This is my ideas, and I don't know if it will be possible, but okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Yael. And now I will leave the word to Dimitris on this matter of
Thank you.
members and distance.
I think this is an extremely important question that's been posed, how to bring members closer to the IPA. As already mentioned, I think many members, possibly a majority of members, really don't know why they're paying dues. And that's extremely important because it already creates ill feeling towards the IPA. You know, where is this money going? I have to confess that before I came onto the board, I knew very little about what the IPA was actually doing. Now, that had, I'm not saying that that was the fault of the IPA necessarily. In fact, almost everything, almost all the activities, I think, of the IPA are there online. If one goes into the site, the IPA site, it's all right there. But the truth be said, the fact is that, you know, we have very, time is a rare commodity for us as psychoanalysts. And I think many of us just don't have the time and, at the end of the day, the energy to go into the site and get all this information. So it's not that we shouldn't be expecting members to come to the IPA. I think the question as posed, how does the IPA go to its members? And I think an important step has already been made. It was mentioned earlier that Harriet Wolff, the president, has already implemented this policy that our board meetings twice a year take place in various cities where, apart from the work of the board, we come into contact with the local societies and have exchanges with them. That's not oversight. That's a form of exchange and communication, really. And I have to say that this took place with my society in Athens, the Hellenic, about 3 years ago, maybe 4, I'm not sure. And that was extremely important for all the members and for me personally at the time, that we had contact with these, the IPA actually involved people, real people, and that we had scientific exchanges, but also, I think most importantly, social exchanges. I mean, the cocktails and the dinners, you know, some of the most interesting and personal discussions and contacts take place during these social events. So that's extremely important. Now, in an ideal world, we would like to have more of these meetings with local societies. I say in an ideal world because that would be a rather expensive undertaking. And we all know that the IPA's finances are not, they're better than they were, but they're not in great shape. So I'm not sure that we would be able to, Hank Young, I don't think would be very happy if we increased the budget in that direction. However, I think something to seriously think about would be to choose the next best thing, which would be online meetings. I think that is one of the benefits of the technology, maybe not so much, maybe a controversial issue in terms of remote analysis, but in terms of meetings, it may not be exactly the same or as good as in-person meetings, but it may be good enough, such as the one we're having at this moment. So I think one suggestion would be that we think about on the board implementing more online meetings between the IPA and local component societies.
Thank you. Thank you, Dimitris. And
Okay.
now it's Gabriela, please.
Yes, can you hear me? Yeah. I think that the key word in order to answer your good question about IPA member and distance is communication. I think that scientific communication is essential to our community. Webinars, conferences on current clinical issues, and also interdisciplinary exchange will be implemented and continued in my view. The possibility for societies to share their scientific events remotely, for example, with other members from different societies allows bridging between all IPA members and can help make the distance shorter. In my opinion, communication allows members to confront and share not only on clinical and theoretical experience, but also on political and cultural aspects such as different culture of training, for example, in a constructive way and in a climate of mutual respect. The actual board, I know that I've worked with considerable energy to develop opportunities to strengthen relationship among IPA members. Because the IPA, I think that should have communication between, this is an intuition because I see lecture for the first time, but I think that look at structures of the IPA and local component societies. So we have two point of view, parallel point of view from the IPA. And I think that regarding the internal structure of the IPA is fundamental to continue strengthen links with different regions in their member. In fact, we have 3 regions. Each region has a specificities based on the history. 3 and 4, because there are Latin American, North American, Europe, and Asia Pacific region. And probably, despite the different historical and cultural diversity from the different regions, to communicate is really an opportunity to widen and to enrich psychoanalysis despite those differences. And I heard about the PMP project from Harriet Wolf and Adriana Prengler and the link function. I think these are in the efforts that the board, the actual board, is doing in this direction. The regions, yes. Last but not least, I think that the real answer is to strengthen the clinical and theoretical dialogue among colleagues in different regions, in all regions. And I think that the board should continue to strengthen the bonds between IPA and IPSO, because the candidate in a transversal mode, because the candidates are the future of psychoanalysis and IPA too. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. Thank you very much. It's interesting to hear that so many of us are talking about what I would say is in-reach, not outreach, but in-reach, the contact, the communication within our large IPA society. Then please, now it's Leslie.
Thank you, Francesca. I think when the question of distance is posed, we have to think not only in terms of geographical distance, but historical distance and also psychological distance that exists among the different regions and in the same region. And those historical and cultural differences also create actually psychological distances. So putting on the agenda the question of distance means thinking very much about a lot of the things that all my colleagues have already just said, but which really are underlined by Gabriela in the notion of communication and how we understand that communication across regions, inside regions, and the ways that one of the things I found surprising, but this is about my naivety, of course, in relation to the IPA's internationalism, that in some countries, the IPA societies have very large disagreements themselves and distances between them. So the question of distance is a huge issue for an international organization of psychoanalysts. So I think it is one thing we have to think about. How do we bridge those gaps? The question of the technology and the, as it were, indirect advantages that have happened to us because of the pandemic mean that a whole range of things that have not happened before so consistently and widely in forms of webinars, conversations, intra-regional meetings, not of all the societies, but informal ones between societies from different regions, can open up. And this is a real possibility for the future. I also wanted to mention the link function, which I do think is extremely important, and which, while being thought of initially as a link between presidents and the board to let the presidents of societies know what is happening in the board and give them a report, I think there must be ways in which we can think about the link function in relation to the membership. And in my own society in London, I approached the president there, not my link president, to say that I wondered about my writing a report about board meetings to be put on the members section. And the president and vice president were extremely enthusiastic about this idea. So it means that when there is a board meeting, I report to my link presidents, but I am also making available only my account, but a report on the IPA, which means that the IPA is a bit more available. As Demetra said, people don't go onto the website, even though it's all there, but they do tend to read their own institute's websites and their own emails. So I think that we can think more and more about collaborative activity that involves less expense than actually going to places, even though going to places is very important indeed for the kinds of things it enables in terms of talking with other members in informal ways, not just formal ways. The only other thing I would like to mention is that we already have a very under-resourced facility in the International Dictionary. And that is something, again, that the IPA needs to publicize much more widely, because it is an advantage to every candidate and every practicing analyst to have access for free to this dictionary comprised by people from different regions of the corpus of what we regard as the central aspects of psychoanalysis. So I think, like other people, I would encourage both the IPA and the new board that is elected to think more and more, with the help of the communications committee as well, about how we can foster more and more activity with members, not only with presidents or the people that we know, and that this should go forward. And I think also that that means...
Leslie, I have to stop you here.
Okay.
Thank you. And then the last one will be Francisco, please.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Many of the things that I wanted to say have already been said by my colleagues. But well, I wanted to start saying that for me, for my psychoanalytic identity, the IPA has been very important. For me, the IPA is related to many of the psychoanalysts from whom I have learned psychoanalysis and the unconscious. And for me, they were IPA psychoanalysts, and they took care of the IPA, and they tried to maintain the IPA together, even in very complicated moments with a very different crises all over the years. So for me, I think that I have like some kind of enthusiasm with the IPA that sometimes I don't find in others, and I would try to if it was a virus, it was a good thing, try to spread the virus. But well, for me, it's something important. And after there's something, the IPA is an international membership association, but even if we are sent all the members, and I think that it's something paradox because we have to put the head of any psychoanalyst in the world, and I think that it's something a bit puzzling, a bit complicated sometimes, but I think that it's very, very interesting because retaking Wallenstein and Green's discussion about the common ground, I think that there's a common ground for me. And the main thing is that we believe in unconscious, but we believe it perhaps in different ways. But I think that the place where differences can enter into a dialogue are very interesting places and very fruitful places. And for me, I would like to foster the interest in membership in general, in why others think differently. Because I think that there's a certain tendency to say, that's my idea. If the IPA decides with my idea, I'm with the IPA. If the IPA doesn't decide my idea, I'm against it. And I think that it's a childish position. I think that it's much more interesting to be open to why the others think differently. Well, the pandemic has opened many different possibilities. We are being able to work much more, for example, in the board. But when we have met in person, it's something different. We need to meet in person from time to time. It has been very enriching for us. Finally, I'm going to finish. The link function, it's very important, but you know, the representative has contact with the president, and the president is in contact with the society, and the representative is in contact with the board. I think that with the board, I think that we have to foster the contact between presidents and the board, and between representatives and the societies. I think that at least once a year, the meeting should be with all the members of the linked societies, not only with the presidents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francesco. It's fantastic to listen to. I'm so grateful to have been allowed to listen to all your presentations and declarations, and not least to the second part. I was all the time thinking, oh yes, I would like to join that, and this is a good idea. And this, I hope that half the European membership is listening to this one way or the other, to what you have to say, because it's a real inspiration, and I hope really that we will soon be able to listen to this webinar and look at it on the web. So thank you, and good luck to you, each and one of you. I have one final thing to say. I want to mention the Cartagena Conference to you all now, and you have all some kind of engagement, I'm sure. I hope you will go there, and I hope you inspire the members of your local societies. This is also a way to spread the message. Please don't forget the Cartagena Conference, which is enormously interesting, and with a wonderful program coming up, and also a beautiful city, which is also important. Thank you very much. And I think it's a couple of minutes left, but I think we have done a good work together, and good luck to you. And thank you very much for participants out in the cyber world for listening to this and spreading the message and taking up all these interesting suggestions about how to work with to lessen the distance between members and IPA. There are many ways from in both directions. So thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the participants.